Hey guys, today we're going to be building our slab base for our illuminated letters. So what I want you to do with your cube, with your block of clay, is take your fettling knife and divide it. You want to divide it into thirds and cut off this one chunk of third, slice it down, and you want to place this in your bag. Keep this to the side, keep it nice and hydrated. Grab a bag. Wrap it up. Whether you put it in your Ziploc or this is fine, whatever you want. Then I'm going to smooth in this line. He didn't have to make lines in there, but I did. And I'm going to smooth in the cracks, any holes. I'm just going to push together, wedge it a little bit, compress the clay so that when I roll it out, this is going to be what I use to roll out my slab. When I roll it out, it won't have holes, or hopefully it won't have air bubbles. And then I'm going to start to flip it on two sides so that it becomes more flat, right? I'm going to compress the clay until it becomes a little bit more flat, like this. Smooth out the holes as I go. And once it's a little bit flatter, notice how, again, I'm flipping it on both sides like a pancake rather than all 6 sides so that it becomes flat. I'm going to use my roller, whatever you're using, and I'm going to roll my slab out. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want to roll off and create really thin edges. I'm going to just add some water to this so it stays, doesn't crack. Yeah, you don't want to create really thin edges, so you want to kind of stay centered in the middle and use this little short rolling motion. Let me move this up so you can see a little bit better. Short rolling motion. Use some pressure, roll back and forth, rather than rolling all the way to both edges, right? So by staying toward the center, you're forcing the clay in the center to move outward. It's going to take a little bit of muscle and patience. And so by doing that, you're keeping it level. You want to keep the slab an even thickness. I'm also going to roll it the opposite way. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to smooth. I'm going to take my sponge, wet it, and smooth this in really good so that these cracks disappear. Wet sponge. You don't want to soak it, kind of like what I'm doing, but you want to close these gaps. So I'm going to flip it so that now instead of rolling it out one way the whole time, I'll flip it back and forth so that it becomes more of a square than a long, narrow rectangle. So some air bubbles here. Don't really want those. And the thickness that you want your slab, you want it to be about the thickness of your finger. You don't want it to be any thinner than that because it will not support, it'll be too flexible and it will dry quickly, like too quickly. And you don't want that. You want this to be wet enough the whole time that you're working on it so that it doesn't dry out unevenly. I'm going to flip it back again. And my clay is getting a little bit red because my rolling pin had red clay on it. So that's why that's happening. And by now you should already have your cardboard piece. Actually, let me get one. You should have a cardboard piece cut out, and this will help you determine whether or not you're done rolling out or not, right? So I think just going to roll it out a tiny bit more. Tiny bit. Okay. And again, you want it to be even thickness. Okay, so it's about the width of my finger. I'm going to now place my cardboard on top and cut. Use my fettling knife or my X-Acto, cut my rectangle. Okay, and I'll pull off my edges. Didn't cut quite all the way through here. And I'm going to combine these, use a little bit of water so that it stays flexible. Smooth out any cracks and uneven pieces. And now I'm going to put this to the side for now. I'll put it in my bag. I'm going to take out my third leftover clay. Okay, and I'm going to put this in the bag on top of my cardboard. Okay, so this cardboard not only is a tracer, but also something you can store your slab on top of. So it doesn't bend and it's sturdy. Okay, so I'm gonna just close my bag, wrap it underneath itself, keep all the air out of it, and put it to the side. And I'm going to wedge this leftover clay into what I have left over from before. Use the heel of my palm, squish it in. Again, takes a little bit of muscle. You need some pressure to do this. I'm going to fold it over. Add some water. Okay, then I'm going to start making it into a cube once I kind of squish this all into itself. And then once I have a cube, I'm going to start making it flatter by flipping it on two sides only. Right, so gravity, the pressure of me hitting it onto my flat surface is compressing that clay. Okay, now I'm going to start rolling this out. And why I'm rolling this again is not to make another base, but now I need more slab to make a frame and then eventually my letter, my illuminated letter, my fancy three-dimensional letter. And I'm going to make it about the same thickness as my slab. Same thickness. You don't want these pieces too thin either. It will just be more difficult for you. You also don't want it this thick, right? This is too thick. If it's wider than your thumb, or even just the size of your thumb, it'll be hard to tell when it's fully dry, so we don't want that. And if it's not fully dry and we put it in the kiln, then, or if we don't have enough time for it to dry, then it will explode or will not be able to be fired. And we don't want that. So if anyone's ever made pizza or cookies that you need to cut shapes out of, this is a similar practice. Flipping the direction of my roller so that I'm getting a nice broad shape, not a narrow, slender shape. And I'm flipping it over just to make sure that I don't have cracks, and I see that I do. So I'm just taking my sponge, I'm going to kind of seal that up with some pressure and some water. And notice how even if I put a lot of water on it, I'm kind of soaking it back up with the sponge. You don't want to leave water sitting on top of your clay for a while. It will break down the molecules too much, unevenly, and it won't be good for building. There's hair on this. Okay, that's gross. Finish rolling this out. Okay, I think this is good enough. It's thin enough and it's big. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to build my frame first. So I'm going to take out my slab again, take my slab off of my cardboard, put it to the side, and use my cardboard as another guide. Okay, so I'm making a frame that is the size of all the edges of my cardboard. So I'm going to start where my cardboard can fit, and I'm going to make one, and how thick you make it is up to you. I'm going to make mine probably the width of my finger, and I'm making these edges slanted because then I can fit them together. You don't have to do that. You can make them flat, but when you do that, that means the height of your edge will be altered, right? So if this is flat and it ends here, that means the shorter one on this side will have to be even shorter than this size. When you do it this way, you don't necessarily have to do as much measuring. You just have to make them fit together. Okay. It's called a beveled edge. All right, so I'm going to take this piece apart. Now, instead of doing that all over again, I'm just going to use this. I just have to fix that. I'm going to use this piece as my guide, and I'll just make a second one. Okay, so I'll put this on here, and I'll trace it very carefully so that I'm not cutting into it. So now I have my my long edges, that they'll look like this when I put them on my slab. And then I need my shorter edges, so I'll put these to the side, and I'll just do it this way. You just want to be careful that your angles are all similar, right? When you make them, they'll fit together. So this one, I feel like it's too long. I think I made it too deep. Let's see. It's pretty good. And then I'm going to use this piece again as my guide. When you're using this fettling knife, make sure that you're using the blade, the sharp side down. It's not very sharp, it's pretty dull, but there is this little corner here that will tell you which side the blade is on. You don't want to be resting your finger on the side of the blade because that might hurt. So I advise against that. Okay. Now I'm going to score and slip this onto, I just want to see if this space would be large enough for my letter. So if I took this, because I could probably just reuse this, I'm going to reuse this for my letter. So if you have, I would keep your, when you make your frame, keep it to the side of this slab that you roll out because you can always use this instead of rolling out a whole nother slab for your letter. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So you'll take your edges, let's just make sure they fit together before we score and slip them. Go right up to the edge. I have to make this one shorter, I think. And if they don't fit exactly together, you can make them fit together. That's the cool thing about clay. You can kind of just manipulate it until you get it to the shape that you want. Okay, so, oops, I forgot I wasn't showing you that. Okay, so now I'm not going to leave them like that. I'm going to take them off. I'll just do this so that I know where they go. And I'm going to score and slip them. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife here. And the scoring and slipping will help bond these pieces together. Doesn't really matter which direction you go. You just need two interlocking lines, like hashtags. And this scoring and slipping, the scoring won't be effective if your lines are like this. You don't want to make lines that are so far apart that they don't even, they won't suction when you put the pieces together. So you have to make them close together like this. Now I'm going to take water. If you have slip, that's great. I have a little bit of clay in my water, so I'm just going to use some of that and gently put it on inside my score marks. Okay, and now I'm going to fit them together. And I'm not going to just place them on top of each other. I'm going to press into my clay. Wiggle that around. Looks a little messy right now. Obviously, I'm going to clean that up, make it look neat, even. Before I do anything else, I'm going to actually smooth in the outside. And so I'm not doing this on my cardboard, so it's kind of sticking to my ground. But see how there's a crack there? I want to smooth that in. So I'm going to use my wood tool, and I'm going to hold both sides with my fingers and just really gently pull this clay into this crack so that they're even more secure. And so they're even. Okay, so now I don't see any more crack. Looks good. I'm going to flip it on its edge. Do the same thing here. Okay, same thing here on all the edges. And now I can just go back and smooth in the frame, make it look all neat, beautiful. If there's places that aren't completely even, I can do that same thing here, smooth it in with my wood tool. And I can take my paintbrush, which is somewhere hiding from me. Yes. And I can dip it in water and go around all the edges, make them look nice and neat. And so you know what, I'm going to have you guys, if you did save a piece of slab for your letter, the letter is the last thing you're going to add. So we're gonna crumple up that slab. We're going to put this away. And if you're already ready and you have time to move on to the next step, you can just watch the next video. But I'm going to put this on my cardboard and put it away in my bag. Okay, looks good on all sides, nice and even. And I don't want this to dry out, so I'm going to put it in my bag, the bottom, and oops, I don't want that dry clay in there. Okay, I'm going to squeeze all the air out of my bag. I'm going to tie it. All the air out. Tie it really tight. And roll the knot up until the edge, and you can put something heavy over it. You can put it maybe underneath your clay. Just be careful if your cardboard is flimsy, then this might warp your slab. But it's just really, really important that you don't let air in that because it will dry out and then you'll have to redo it. I'm going to crumple up all this slab, add some water to it as I do that so that it stays nice and hydrated. Wedge it with the heel of my palm. Notice how I don't jump straight to wedging with a lot of force like this. I kind of push the clay together before I do that and use my fingers to close gaps. Okay, and then I'm going to do wedging with force, make it a cube, as always. The cube keeps all of the clay evenly moist. If I had it flat, then it would dry out a lot quicker. Okay, And then I'm gonna put this in a bag, keep it nice and tucked away. If you have Ziplocs at home, Ziplocs will be even better for wrapping up your clay pieces. I highly recommend that. Or a Tupperware that is airtight rather than these ShopRite bags. Unfortunately, this is all I have for you. And I only have a limited supply of those Ziplocs. So use your Ziploc. Use more if you have them at home. And the next time we get together, we will add texture. And the last thing we'll do is make our letter. Okay, so keep these nice and hydrated.